If you're watching on the Legacy of Survival channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, because what we're getting into today is the kind of deep, practical historical insight that most documentaries never touch. This isn't nostalgia, and it isn't romanticizing hardship. It's about understanding why men in the Second World War kept their hands functional in sub-zero conditions with gear that would look primitive today, while so many modern high-tech gloves, some costing more than a week's wages, still leave people with numb fingers after 20 minutes. What follows is a straightforward historian-level breakdown of lost techniques, forgotten design principles, and actual fieldcraft that kept hands alive in the coldest campaigns of the war. And yes, by the end, you'll know how to apply those same principles today without spending a fortune. The reason WWII soldiers' hands didn't freeze started long before they even put a glove on. One of the biggest differences between WWII troops and modern outdoor users is the culture of cold weather conditioning they lived under. Soldiers headed into winter campaigns, Italy's Apennines, the Ardennes, the Karelian Isthmus, the Soviet steppes, were acclimatized through long exposure and constant outdoor labor, often without the choice to go indoors. Their circulatory systems adapted to rapid shifts in temperature. That improved peripheral blood flow makes an enormous difference. Your gear only works if your body does. Modern people often step from heated rooms into freezing air without any adaptation, which shocks the extremities. The practical takeaway is that hands trained to cold stay warmer. Daily cold air exposure for short, controlled intervals, keeping the hands uncovered for a few minutes at a time, builds the natural vasodilation response that WWII soldiers relied on without thinking. Their gloves were simple, but they followed principles that modern manufacturers ignore. WWII winter gloves were often nothing more than layered wool or shearling, sometimes with canvas or leather shells. They didn't have gel inserts, waterproof membranes or battery packs, but they used a principle that is almost missing from today's market: controlled ventilation. Modern gloves trap sweat because they're built around marketing, not physiology. Sweat in a glove is the beginning of freezing hands. WWII gloves allowed moisture to escape even while heat was retained. Wool was the primary material because it insulates even when damp, buffers temperature swings, and doesn't collapse when compressed. If you want to apply this now, the modern equivalent is a simple wool inner glove, paired with a windproof but breathable shell. Not waterproof, not sealed, just breathable. It costs a fraction of the designer brands, and it works better. WWII soldiers kept their hands warm through constant micro-movement, not passive insulation. Modern glove buyers often assume that warmth is purely a material problem. Soldiers in the Second World War understood that circulation was their real insulation. Men on sentry duty rotated finger flexes, clenched fists inside mitts, and used their arms to pump blood into their hands. Infantry manuals specifically instructed soldiers to avoid letting the hands go still. On long marches, the rifle was carried in a way that allowed regular shifts of finger position, preventing stagnation. A practical application for you is to treat hand warmth as active maintenance, not passive comfort. If your hands start cooling, move your arms in wide swings or repeatedly press your fingertips against your palm to force warm blood into them. No equipment required. They use mittens far more than gloves because mittens obey physics, not fashion. Every nation involved in winter warfare leaned on mittens. The Soviets issued fur-lined mittens with trigger fingers. The Finns used layered wool mittens. The United States Army issued mitten shells that could go over light gloves. Mittens keep fingers together, drastically reducing surface area and preventing the rapid heat loss that occurs in individual finger compartments. Modern outdoor users often avoid mittens because they're less convenient for phones, zippers, and fine manipulation. Soldiers solved this by doing tasks barehanded quickly, then covering back up. This is still the best method for extreme cold. If you want warm hands, and you're serious about function over aesthetics, carry mittens as your primary layer and wool gloves as your task layer. A detail often ignored in gear discussions is wrist insulation. The arteries that feed the hands run close to the surface at the wrist. World War II soldiers commonly had long-sleeved undershirts, knit cuffs, or jacket liners that sat tightly around this area. That trapped heat where it mattered most. Modern gloves often stop short at the wrist, leaving a gap where heat leaks out instantly. A practical modern fix is to use long wrist gaiters or sew extended cuffs onto gloves. The improvement is immediate and dramatic. They dried gear constantly because, well, moisture was the real enemy. Soldiers in winter campaigns actually spent a surprising amount of time drying their gloves against body heat, tucked inside coats, undershirts, or near small stoves when those were available. Wet gloves were treated like a liability, not just an inconvenience. Modern glove owners often treat their gear as waterproof, which honestly leads to carelessness. Once moisture enters, whether from snow or sweat, the insulation just collapses. To apply this today, rotate gloves if possible, and always store them against warmth, not in a pack. Even in the field, you can dry gloves inside your jacket while walking. Wartime survival emphasized circulation over comfort, and that mindset, frankly, kept hands alive. Soldiers avoided tight gloves, tight sleeves, and tight grips on rifles in winter. Restriction kills circulation. Modern gloves are often snug because they're sized for fashion and dexterity. WWII gear was intentionally loose to allow warm air to circulate. A simple, modern takeaway: size your winter gloves one size up and keep the layers loose. The modern $200 glove problem comes from over-engineering and ignoring physiology. Today's glove industry sells features, not effectiveness. Waterproof membranes trap sweat, insulation compresses under use, and complex stitching creates cold spots. WWII gloves were crude by comparison, but they followed the fundamentals that matter: breathability, layering, circulation, dryness, and active body heat management. If you follow these principles, your hands will outperform most modern technology. If you want more historically grounded survival insight like this, subscribe to the Legacy of Survival channel and share this guide so more people can learn the forgotten knowledge that kept real soldiers alive in the coldest winters of the 20th century.